Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Thira Banachari Jamuna Thira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Thira Banachari Jamuna Thira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivrajakacharsha Astho Tadasata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivrajakacharsha Astho Tadasata Sri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananti Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Gidi Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sri Navadvip Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan. Hari sarvatra sarvada. Srotavya kirtitavyascha. Smartavyo bhagavan nirnam. Tasmad sarvatmana rajan. Hari sarvatra sarvada. Srotavya kirtitavyascha. Smartavyo bhagavan nirnam. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan. Hari sarvatra sarvada. Srotavya kirtitavyascha. Smartavyo bhagavan nirnam.
Rajan.
Vaishnavis. Tasmat. Therefore, sarva, all, atmana, soul, Rajan, O King, Hari, the Lord, Sarvatra, everywhere, Sarvada, always, Srotabhya, must be heard, Kirtitavya, glorified, Cha, also, Smaratavya, be remembered, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Nirnam, by the human being. O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Sukadev Goswami begins this verse with the word tasmat, or therefore, because in the previous verse he has already explained that there is no auspicious means for salvation other than the sublime process of bhakti yoga. The bhakti yoga process is practiced by the devotees in different methods, like hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshiping, praying, rendering service in love, becoming friendly, and offering all that one may possess. All 9 methods are bona fide methods, and either all of them, some of them, or even one of them can bring about the desired result for the sincere devotee. But out of all the 9 different methods, the first one, namely hearing, is the most important function in the process of bhakti yoga. Without hearing sufficiently and properly, no one can make any progress by any of the methods of practice. And for hearing only, all the Vedic literatures are there, compiled by the authorized persons like Vyasadeva, who is the powerful incarnation of Godhead. And since it has been ascertained that the Lord is the supersoul of everything, He should therefore be heard and glorified everywhere and always. That is the special duty of the human being. When the human being gives up the process of hearing about the all-pervading personality of Godhead, he becomes victim to hearing rubbish transmitted by man-made machines. Machinery is not bad, because through the machine one can take advantage of hearing about the Lord. but because machinery is used for ulterior purposes, it is creating rapid degradation in the standard of human civilization. It is said here that it is incumbent upon the human beings to hear, because the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are made for that purpose. Living beings other than human beings have no ability to hear such Vedic literatures. If human society gives itself to the process of hearing the Vedic literature, it will not become a victim to the impious sounds vibrated by impious men who degrade the standards of the total society. Hearing is solidified by the process of chanting. One who has perfectly heard from the perfect source becomes convinced about the all-pervading personality of Godhead and thus becomes enthusiastic in glorifying the Lord. All the great acharyas like Ramanuja, Madhva, Chaitanya, Saraswati Thakur, or even in other countries, Muhammad, Christ, and others have all extensively glorified the Lord by chanting always and in every place. Because the Lord is all-pervading, it is essential to glorify Him always and everywhere. In the process of glorifying the Lord, there should be no restriction of time and space. This is called Sanatan Dharma, or Bhagavat Dharma. Sanatan means eternal, always and everywhere. Bhagavat means pertaining to Bhagavan, the Lord. The Lord is the master of all time and all space, and therefore the Lord's holy name must be heard, glorified, and remembered everywhere in the world. That will bring about the desired peace and prosperity so eagerly awaited by the people of the world. The word cha includes all the remaining processes or methods of bhakti yoga as mentioned above. Om Agyantimidandasya Jnananjana Chalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Gurun Sri Juthapadapamam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahakana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahakana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktabinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, entitled The Lord in the Heart. Text 36. I am very grateful and very happy to be with you today. This particular verse was selected by His Grace Dravida Prabhu. As your obedient servant, I will try to speak from this verse. And as your obedient servant, we will all try to hear from this verse. Thank you. When Srila Prabhupada was living in Vrindavan, the temple of Sri Sri Radha Damodar, he spent years translating and compiling his purports for the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And with great effort, one volume at a time, the first canto was in 3 volumes. One at a time, he somehow or other tried to raise the funds, travel all the way to Delhi. In those days, the roads to Vrindavan were hardly even roads. You would take a 3rd-class train, which were really crowded. And there he would sometimes stay at the little room in Chippiwada, and he would try to convince some printers to give him loans or some kindness to publish when he really didn't have the means. And that took several years. Sitting in that tiny little room, brick walls covered with clay and mud, usually no electricity. He had a little manual typewriter that someone gave him, and he would type away, studying the commentaries of the great acharyas. And Srila Prabhupada, in that most intimate setting, described later that in his purports, he offered the world his devotional ecstasies. And Dravida Prabhu would know better, but I don't know if he had any editors in those days besides himself.
He was sometimes in broken language, if that's where you're going.
Yeah, they were. It was actually, he was fixing the broken language of the English. But it wasn't the type of English that English-speaking people are accustomed to in the Western world. So he did it all by himself. He had no team. he had Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami's blessings at Radha Temple. He explained he was always feeling himself in the presence of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, and all of the great acharyas. And for each verse he would carefully study, meditate, pray on all the various commentaries of the great acharyas for each verse over the centuries. And then with his heart filled with true compassion for all the people of the world today, he would present his purports. And when he, after several years, when he completed all 3 volumes of the first canto, he felt, now I should go to the West. Krishna tells in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that in this age of Kali Yuga, Krishna, to dispel the darkness of quarrel and hypocrisy, of illusion and suffering, Krishna descended in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just a few years ago, I took some special guests from America to some places in South India. And while I was there, I happened to be in a city in Kerala called Cochin. And someone gave me a room. I don't know where I was, but somebody just gave me a room to stay in. And early one morning, just all alone, I decided to walk and chant japa. I was walking and I was walking quite a few miles. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know why I was going. But I was walking and I came upon the sea, the Arabian Sea. And as I walked further, I saw these gigantic ships. In fact, it was an Indian Navy ship and they were doing drills. I kept walking and I saw cargo ships. Then I saw this incredible brass plaque that was bigger than me, actually. And it said on it, in this very place in 1965, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, on his journey on the Jaladuta cargo ship to America, he stopped here. He celebrated Janmashtami. He celebrated his 69th birthday. And it was here on this spot that the boxes of Srimad Bhagavatam boarded the boat. Because he boarded in Calcutta on Friday the 13th of August, 1965. But it was in Cochin that the books were shipped by trains or trucks. And it was just around that time of Janmashtami that the boxes of the Srimad Bhagavatam were put on the boat. And that's something very special. On Janmashtami, the day of Krishna's appearance, the Srimad Bhagavatam appeared on the ship to sail across oceans and continents with Srila Prabhupada. And when Prabhupada came to New York City, Butler, Pennsylvania, and then back to New York City, he said, when I came off the ship, he really didn't know if anyone would be there to greet him for sure. It was just one stranger, a hired person, just came and put him on a bus. He said, I didn't know whether I should walk right or left when he first came off the ramp of the boat. We know how he had heart attacks and seasickness, 38 days at sea. But he said because he knew the Srimad Bhagavatam was with him, his faith in the holy name and the presence of Srimad Bhagavatam and the order of his guru, he felt completely confident of his mission. When he came to America, there was only one book distributor. That was Srila Prabhupada himself. Before he even came to New York, while he was living in Butler, Pennsylvania, he was staying at Gopal Agarwal's house. Gopal's wife was an American lady named Sally. And really that was the first American Prabhupada ever really got to know. And he studied her very carefully. Prabhupada would sometimes say you can tell the content of an ocean by studying one drop. Well, Sally Agarwal was the first drop. And he was just amazed. After living in Vrindavan, in that little room at the holy place, things that we take so for granted were extraordinary. He heard this sound, and Prabhupada didn't, what's going on? In the house there was this really ghastly sound. And he came out and saw Sally dragging this thing around. He said, what are you doing? She said, it was a vacuum cleaner. Vacuuming the carpet. He said, this is what you do in America? In India we just have a broom, It's so simple, so quiet. And then, he used to, I love to tell the story. Sally once told us that Prabhupada would, in the bathroom, the water would be pouring out of the bed from under the door onto her carpet, and she would just hear this in the bathroom, and she was shocked. What's going on there? They were mutually giving culture shocks to each other. It's very reciprocal. Prabhupada's hearing these Ugra Kamra sounds of vacuum cleaners. What are you doing? I'm cleaning the floor. So she's hearing this in the bathroom, and water's pouring out. She knocked on the door and said, Swamiji, what are you doing? He said, I'm washing my clothes. And he filled up the bathtub and stood outside and then took a little lota and poured it. That's how he bathed and washed his clothes. And she said, Swamiji, you're supposed to go inside the bathtub. Prabhupada said, you go inside? He thought that was so unclean. To go in where the water, you step where the water is. Anyways, during that time, Sally Agarwal, she was a very conservative lady. And Prabhupada was not staying with her. He was staying at the YMCA Hotel, which is a really kind of a low-budget place to stay. And he would come to her house. He would walk about a mile every day to do cooking. And she was so concerned that the people of Butler would see him walking around and going to the house, and they would have so many questions. Who is this person? Because nobody ever saw anything like him before. Butler, Pennsylvania is a very conservative place, especially in 1965. And he would just freely walk down the street, and everyone would be looking. So she did not want to be answering anybody's questions. So just to avoid that, she called the Butler Eagle, the newspaper, to do an article about him so everyone would know who he is. And would spare her of the trouble. And one professor saw that article and invited Prabhupada to speak at a college. The first time Prabhupada ever spoke to the American youth. A wonderful name for a college, too. Slippery Rock. Slippery Rock State College. Does not have the prestige as Harvard or MIT. But it was a college. And the professor was Professor Larson and Professor Sharma, two people. And many years later, I think it was around 1979, I went to Slippery Rock State College and was invited by Professor Larson to speak in his classes. And he took me to the same places Prabhupada spoke. And he took me, between the classes, he took me to all the places he went with Srila Prabhupada. And one place was really incredible. It was in the campus green, like the lawn between all the classroom buildings. And there was this seat. It was like cast and molded concrete. And it looked like an incredible Vyasasan. And he said that's where he personally sat with Prabhupada and talked. I said, what did you talk about? And Prabhupada was asking him about the trees. What kind of tree is this? And he was showing me the same trees that Prabhupada was inquiring about. He was showing me that. So this is an oak tree, and this is an elm tree, and this is a maple tree. And Prabhupada was asking if they give fruits and if they give flowers. And then after quite a while of describing all the trees to Prabhupada, Prabhupada started telling him about the trees of India. He said there's a Kadamba tree, and that's where Krishna would stand and play his flute under this tree. And he said he was telling all these pastimes of Krishna related to trees and all these lessons coming from trees. So Prabhupada so gracefully opened his heart. And I remember Professor Larson said about Srila Prabhupada that he was so humble, unassuming, and simple. He said, I knew he was a great scholar, but I could have never imagined that he would establish a worldwide movement. He said, he must have been in the background, and his American disciples must have done everything. I explained that actually he was leading the way. His American disciples were kind of just bewildered, trying to run behind him. And I asked what else happened. And he said to me, just before he left, Prabhupada sold me these 3 books, the Srimad Bhagavatam. He said his heart was so eager to have these books in the campus library. I said, "Are they still there?" He said, "I don't know, they probably are." So we went there together to the library. We looked on the library cards. And now I guess it's all computerized, but in those days there were little cards and little drawers. And it had a number, and we went, and there they were. And they were brand new. And out of the 3, 2 of them were never taken off the shelf or taken out by anyone. One of them had one name that, years ago somebody read. The others were just sitting there. So I remember I knew some people who lived close by, and I gave them a brand new set of Srimad Bhagavatams and said, "Go and exchange. Tell them you have old ones there, and we will exchange them." So the librarian said, "Oh, those old ones for new ones? Very good." So anyways, those original Bhagavatams that he gave to the first university, I gave them to Prabhupada's palace at New Vrindavan, and I don't know where they are now, but maybe they're there. And then when Srila Prabhupada came to New York, there are many letter exchanges that Prabhupada had with Sally Agarwal about those books, about the crates of the books. And here in the second canto that we're reading from today, the Prabhupada disciples of ISKCON remember the eagerness. They were coming out, little paperback publications of 1 chapter at a time. And how we would be eager to receive those books. This was one of them, The Lord in the Heart. It's one little chapter. And devotees, whenever possibly we were given time, we would just read it over and over again. It was Prabhupada's writings when he actually came to America. So here in this particular chapter, Shukadeva Goswami is actually beginning his message to Parikshit Maharaj. The first canto really sets the scene of the sages of Naimisharanya speaking to Sutta Goswami. And we get the scene of Parikshit Maharaj entering the scene and his being cursed to die in 7 days. And Sukadeva Goswami begins his teachings. Today's verse. King Parikshit lived an incredible full life. He was young, he was powerful, he was at the top of his career of being an emperor. He's the son of the grandson of the Pandavas. And here he has just a few days to live. And Sukadeva Goswami is giving this message, this verse that Dravida Prabhu has so mercifully selected, encapsulates the very heart of the spirit of Srimad Bhagavatam. O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. There is the Vedic injunction that all the knowledge and all those rules and all the regulations and all the philosophical presentations of all the Vedas and all the scriptures throughout all of existence are ultimately meant to bring us to follow two principles: to always remember Krishna and to never forget Krishna. Sukadeva Goswami is using this word essential. Every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. There's really no space between those two. Always and everywhere. It's quite profound. It says everything. But it's not so easy. Because in this world there are so many distractions. And this purport Srila Prabhupada is describing how material civilization provides endless distractions always and everywhere. And how to not be distracted. Because people are so habituated, conditioned by things that give some sense of security, some sense of pleasure, some sense of relief to the mind and the senses. And we become addicted to those topics. Srila Prabhupada would sometimes tell us that story of the miners in England, and there was a Christian preacher who came to try to convert them. And he said, if you don't take to this path, you will have to suffer in hell. And they said, well, what's hell? He said, it's very dark. It's very damp. And they said, well, that's the way it is in the mines. We're used to it. So he had to use his creative time, place, and circumstance abilities. He said, in hell, there are no newspapers. And they said, oh, how horrible. And they converted. So people are so addicted to hearing gossip and hearing all kinds of news. Usually it's kind of traditional. The first thing people do in the morning is read the newspaper. Yes? In spiritual society, the first thing people do in the morning is come to Mangalarti, hear kirtan, chant japa, offer prayers, offer obeisances. So, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasa varjam rasopyasya param dristvani vartate. It's very difficult to give up these habits, especially the habits of gossip, just hearing mundane subjects. But if we experience the higher taste, then it is not only possible, it's wonderful. So Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing here the first principle of the 9 processes of devotional service is to hear. To open one's heart, as we were speaking yesterday, with a sense of urgency, with a sense of hunger to hear the glories of the Lord. And through hearing, all the other 9 processes of devotional service become activated. It's interesting because Srila Prabhupada here is emphasizing so much hearing. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became a devotee, after being the greatest Vedantic scholar in all of India, by the Lord Chaitanya's mercy, he became a great devotee. He asked Lord Chaitanya, of the 9 processes of devotional service, which is most important? And Lord Chaitanya said, Kirtan, the chanting of the holy names. So if Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu emphasized so much Kirtan, why here? Hearing is so important. Because they're inseparable. When we chant, we hear. When we're chanting japa, we must be attentive to hear the sound of the holy names. When we're chanting japa, kirtan, with bhajan, the absorption of our chanting is how we're hearing. So hearing and chanting are inseparable. And the more we become infused with the presence of Krishna by hearing, the more enthusiastic we will be to chant. Shukadeva Goswami, he perfected devotional service simply by kirtanam, chanting. There is examples of how, there's a particular example of how great souls perfected their lives by following one process of devotional service. Parikshit Maharaj just heard Sukadeva Goswami was chanting. And his chanting was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. So Kirtan is Srimad Bhagavatam class. Kirtan is when we're explaining the content of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the teachings and the pastimes and the glories of the Lord. And Kirtan is when we're singing, when we're chanting on our beads. This is all various forms of Kirtan. And it's so important that as we're chanting, we become absorbed in the sound vibration. That's hearing. Oftentimes when Srila Prabhupada would be asked about how to chant japa, he'd hear. Chant clearly and hear. That absorption. Because Krishna is all pure. When we're absorbed in Krishna, we become purified. Pavitra. And this, Srila Prabhupada is explaining how when one is infused with Krishna's grace by hearing, then it awakens enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is such a vital part of the process of surrender. I remember I was once in a place where somebody asked Prabhupada the question, what if Prabhupada was talking so much about the need to be enthusiastic. He quoted Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada that unless one is enthusiastic, one cannot preach, one cannot spread this mission. One should be enthusiastic to hear, enthusiastic to chant in kirtan and japa, enthusiastic to serve, enthusiastic to see the deities. Yegata mam prapadyante. Krishna reciprocates according to our surrender. Krishna reveals himself according to the level of our surrender, the sincerity of our surrender. And that surrender is so much expressed and developed by our enthusiasm. Because enthusiasm is an expression of our free will. So after Prabhupada was describing so much the importance to be enthusiastic, a devotee asked, what if I do not feel enthusiastic? That sounds like a serious problem. You need to be enthusiastic, but the enthusiastic is a feeling inside of yourself. What if I don't feel any enthusiasm? And Srila Prabhupada, he replied, if you do not feel enthusiastic, you should act enthusiastic. That's called tapasya. Tapo divyam putraka yena satvam sudyayasyam brahmasokyam tvanandam. The human life is meant for tapasya. Tapasya doesn't mean doing things when you don't want to do it, or not doing things when you want to do it. Tapasya means it doesn't matter whether you want to do it or don't want to do it, whether you feel like it or don't feel it. You do what is favorable for Krishna consciousness. I may feel very enthusiastic today to do something for Krishna, to come and to speak Srimad Bhagavatam. Or I may feel just so tired and bored and, God, I just want to hide under a tree. It really doesn't, those things don't matter. How we feel doesn't really matter. What matters is samsiddhir haritoshanam. I want to please Krishna. So this, if it will please Krishna, I will be enthusiastic. I've been on airplanes where airline hostesses, I go to the bathroom and I see them, they're gossiping each other and they're really fried. They're telling one airline hostess is saying, my life is in ruins, and they're crying. And then as soon as somebody rings the bell, they go out and say, oh, sir, please, and they're smiling. How may I serve you? Please have this, please they have this, and then they come back on. Because if she doesn't do that, she'll lose her job. So people are enthusiastic. They act enthusiastic, even if they're not enthusiastic, to make a living or to be popular or whatever reason. Yeah, I've seen musicians, they're just on tour and they're just, to be enthusiastic on stage, they take all kinds of drugs and, and medicines and whatever they have to do because they have to be enthusiastic. So to make it in the world, even in the material level, enthusiasm's important, whether we feel like it or not. So how much greater if we're doing it for Krishna, if we're doing it for God. It's the path of self-realization. It's what pleases Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, his only desire was to see us happy, to see us make spiritual progress. He wanted nothing for himself. He gave his life to give us true spiritual peace, happiness, and love in Krishna consciousness. And his happiness was to see us receiving it. And Srila Prabhupada was so pleased when he saw we were enthusiastic. Enthusiastic to go out and chant in the streets, enthusiastic for us to go out and distribute books, enthusiastic to come and dance and chant before the deities, to serve the deities. That enthusiasm is life. When it's built on the foundation of the proper intentions to please our gurus and Krishna. So this answer that Srila Prabhupada gave was so meaningful. Whether we feel like it or don't feel like it, we act enthusiastic. Because it will please the Lord within our heart. It will please our gurus, it will please the Vaishnavas. Enthusiasm to hear. And sometimes when we don't feel enthusiastic, that's the time when we could make the best spiritual progress. Because when we don't feel enthusiastic, that means we really have to surrender for a higher purpose than just what I like to do. So when we feel enthusiastic, we're very inspired. I can make such spiritual progress. I'm so grateful I have this enthusiasm that's been given to me by the Lord in our heart, our gurus and Krishna and Prabhupada. And if I don't feel enthusiastic, I'm so grateful. Now I have an opportunity to surrender, not for me, but for the devotees, for Krishna. So every situation is a perfect opportunity to make spiritual progress. But this enthusiasm is so important. And Radhanath Swami tells that gossip, criticizing others, just talking about all these mundane things, people are so addicted to gossip. What was it when was it like a telex or something, a fax machine? Telex. Something where they wanted to establish that to communicate all around ISKCON. It was some very primitive form of communication. Prabhupada was writing letters. And now you could just, it's like a telegram, it just shoots messages off, and we have them right in our own temples. The devotees were very excited about it. And Prabhupada said, you will simply gossip and talk nonsense prajalpa. Haribol. Anyways, now we have internet and social media. And we see how much prajalpa, how much gossip, how much criticizing. But Srila Prabhupada explains the same machines can actually be used to spread Krishna Katha with enthusiasm. So in this sense, Radhanath Das Goswami tells that this gossip, it steals from the heart all propensity to hear and chant about Krishna. It's a great enemy. Rupa Goswami, he writes, one of the principles of devotional service is to give up the inclination to find faults with others. Radhanath Das Goswami compares the mind is victimized by this propensity to gossip. It steals away our propensity for Krishna consciousness. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he repeated the same message in a very graphic, incredible way. He left Navadvip and became a sannyasi to give Krishna consciousness to people who were avoiding his mercy in the past. And then he came back to a place called Kuliyagram after taking sannyas. And many people who were very offensive to devotees came and surrendered to him. And one particular person, he was offering his obeisances from a distance because he was so ashamed. And Lord Chaitanya called him forward. He saw him. And this person was feeling so miserable. He said, for so many years, I was criticizing your devotees. What should I do? Lord Chaitanya said, when you criticize the devotees, when you find faults with others, it's like drinking poison. This is Krishna's interpretation. We have our justifications and our rationalizations and our excuses. But this is Krishna's, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most parama karuna pahunduijana, supremely merciful. He's saying this gossip, this finding faults, it's when you do it with your mouth, it's drinking poison. It kills the propensity for true devotion. He said there's only one antidote to this deadly poison. Nectar. To glorify Krishna, to glorify Krishna's devotees, that is the nectar that neutralizes the effects of the poison. So he said, with your same mouth, stop forever drinking this poison and drink the nectar of glorifying Krishna, glorifying the devotees of Krishna, and glorify the holy names. Always, everywhere. And he said, and then your life will be perfect. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's a beautiful story when he was traveling. He made an attempt to go to Vrindavan once, and he was returning to Jagannath Puri. And there's a place called Varaha Nagara, which is actually in the area of Calcutta. It's still there today. There's a particular little ashram there, and the story I'm about to speak is that site. There's a temple and a shrine where it took place. You could go today. Maybe not today, but soon. And Lord Chaitanya was traveling, and there was a Brahmin, and he was just sitting all alone near the Ganga, and he was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya heard it. He was so enthusiastic. He said, go on reciting, go on reciting. And the person was reading, and Lord Chaitanya, this person's just narrating the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so enthusiastic just to hear the Bhagavatam spoken. Tears were pouring from his eyes, his hairs were standing on end, and he was dancing uncontrollably in ecstasy. I don't see anybody dancing today. So much for my speech. But that was Lord Chaitanya's taste for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Just by hearing the words, he was dancing and crying, and he was for 8 hours continuously. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced this person. He was embracing him again and again. He said, go on reciting, go on reciting. After about 8 hours of Lord Chaitanya dancing to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, he gave him the name Bhagavat Acharya. You are the Acharya of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's taste for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And when he returned to Puri every day, for many, many hours, he would go to the temple of Tota Gopinath, where Gadadhar Pandit resided. And there Gadadhar Pandit would recite Srimad Bhagavatam to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they would discuss among themselves. 3, 4, 5 hours every single day they would sit there to discuss the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's described they cried so much that later on, when Srinivasacharya came to learn from Gadadhar Pandit, he showed him how most of the print from the palm leaves have been washed away by the tears, by the sangam of the tears of Lord Chaitanya and Gadadhar Pandit. So this is their enthusiasm to hear. And our beloved Srila Prabhupada, because this is the avatars. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna in the mood of Sri Radha, who's taking the role of a devotee to teach by his example how to make progress in bhakti. Lord Chaitanya's enthusiasm to hear, to chant, was not, it was his ecstatic, spontaneous love, but it was also the standard of an example that we have to strive to hold on the threshold of our aspirations in life. Mahajano yena gadasa panta. The path of perfection is to follow in the footsteps of great souls. And Srila Prabhupada would love to tell the story of one of his early meetings with his Guru Maharaj. His first meeting was at number 1 Ultadanga Junction Road in Calcutta, 1922, where his friend Narendra Mullik said to Prabhupada with Abhay Charan, he was a very, very active, he was an activist in the movement of Gandhi. And he said, please come and hear a sadhu. And Prabhupada said, I've seen so many sadhus, I'm not interested. But he said, Prabhupada said, my friend forced me to come and see him. And they went on the rooftop of this little, it's a ground floor and a rooftop, that's all there is. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's quarters was on the rooftop. And Prabhupada came, and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, you are an intelligent young man, you should spread the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Western world in the English language. The first communication they ever had, he was given a lifelong mission. It's a very important place. Not only was that the place where Srila Prabhupada said in his heart on that first meeting, he said, I accepted him as my eternal spiritual master. And as of February, or maybe March, I think it was March of this year, just after the GBC meetings, it was the first time since 1922 that devotees have access to that rooftop. From the time of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it was actually not 1922, it was 1930, from the first time since 1930. In 1930, they built a beautiful temple and moved out of that rented space. They had a procession with the deities that were at Ultadanga to the Bagh Bazaar Gaudiya Math. There were many beautiful articles about that festival, and they never went back. And the day that they left, a family moved there, and there was a little girl in the family, and now she's a really old lady. And just in the month of February, March, for the first time, she moved out. She would never allow anyone to go upstairs to see that rooftop. And now ISKCON has full possession of that place. So now anytime we have access to the stairs that go up, and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's, his bhajan kutir, and the rooftop he would preach every night, and where almost all of Prabhupada's godbrothers also joined at that place. The difficult thing is, it's completely dilapidated. But the good part of that is everything is the original materials. From 1922, they've never changed anything. So it's in its original state. Just needs to be cleaned up and restored. So it's very beautiful. So soon after that, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, a few years later, was in Koshi giving a parikrama of Sri Vrindavan Dham. And Prabhupada, who was living then in Allahabad. Would you like to hear some interesting news? As of last year, there is no such thing as Allahabad. The state government changed the name to its original name, Prayagraj. So now in every map of India and when you go to the station, it's not Allahabad, it's Prayagraj. And Prabhupada's pharmacy was the Prayag pharmacy. But anyways, he went to Vrindavan to meet Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I just heard a few days ago this recording of Prabhupada where he was saying how they were going to the Sheshashayi temple for a pilgrimage, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was going to leave the yatra the next day, but he was speaking one last night, and anyone who wanted to stay back could stay back, and everyone else go to visit this holy place. So almost everybody, except a few handful of the most intimate associates of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, everyone went. And Prabhupada, as our founder, Acharya, teaching by his example, he would tell us these stories, to reveal his own divine heart, but also to give us an important lesson to follow. He said he was thinking, what will I see by going to this temple? Let me sit and hear from my Guru Maharaj. And it appears Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would sometimes give very long classes. Because Prabhupada said he sat for many hours. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada would sometimes speak very deep philosophy. He said, sometimes I understood, but I would listen, I would hear. And a little later, when the Kumbh Mela was happening in Prayag, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came there, Prabhupada was recommended for initiation. And when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur saw him, Abhay, Charan, he said, yes, I have noted he likes to hear. He does not go away. And that meant so much for Prabhupada, that his Guru Maharaj said that about him. He likes to hear. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave such emphasis on that enthusiasm to hear. And Srila Prabhupada provided for us that emphasis, enthusiasm to hear. And what if we don't feel enthusiastic? That doesn't matter. We don't feel enthusiastic. We act enthusiastic. We speak enthusiastic to hear. Prabhupada gave the analogy of when you have jaundice, sugarcane juice is an excellent cure. But the problem is the nature of the disease. It makes sugarcane juice taste bitter. So you don't like it, but you have to be enthusiastic to take it anyway. And as you get cured, then it tastes sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. Katamritam, the nectar of hearing about Krishna is the sweetest nectar in all of existence. But because we're diseased by the propensity for gossip and mundane subject matters, we'd rather do other things. So when we're in a healthy spiritual state, we have an uncontrollable enthusiasm to hear and chant. And when we're not in that state, we understand it's because we're covered by this jaundice-like disease of our propensities for mundane subjects. And then our enthusiasm is to take the medicine. Enechi ashadi maya nashi borolagi harina mahamantra lao tumi magi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I have come to give you this medicine, this ashadi, the medicine of the holy names of Krishna, the medicine of bhakti, the medicine of hearing and chanting. And so much of the process of surrendering to the 9 process of bhakti is our enthusiasm. And that medicine, for sure, if we take it with the right intention, gradually or rapidly, we know for sure. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyashim nam namaskaro. Mame vaishashi shatyam te pratijani priyoshibe. Krishna tells, always think of me. Become my devotee, worship me, offer your homage to me. And this hearing and chanting is in the association of devotees is the very foundation of bhakti. If we do it with enthusiasm, it's Krishna's promise we will come to him. Krishna's all pure. In the 10th canto, that means Parikshit Maharaj, he did not eat, he did not drink, he did not sleep for 6 days now, when the 10th canto is being spoken, 5 to 6 days. And he's telling Sukadev Goswami that when you're speaking, Dravida Prabhu could recite so many of the exact slokas that we're speaking, but I'm only going to paraphrase. But I'll try to be enthusiastic at least. That the narration that's coming from you, Parikshit Maharaj is talking to Sukadev Goswami, it's like the Ganges river of nectar flowing from your mouth. And in the past, Parikshit Maharaj, you remember when he was really hungry and thirsty and he was traveling through the forest, he kind of lost his intelligence because he was so thirsty, and he asked Samik Rishi, please give me water. And Samik Rishi was in samadhi and he didn't hear him, and Parikshit Maharaj was totally out of character, some higher power. And he actually took that dead snake and said, what kind of hospitality are you giving me? You're not even giving me water. I'm the king, I'm the emperor. And because of that, he was cursed to die. And that was just a few hours without water. Here, he's gone for so many days, and he's saying, I'm not feeling any hunger or any thirst at all, because I'm drinking the nectar of Krishna Katha. And that nectar is increasing more and more and more my desire to hear. When Haridas Thakur would chant 300 names, he wasn't falling asleep. It wasn't even an austerity for him. He was tasting the sweetness of the nectar of the holy names. Trinadapi sunichena tarori basihishnana amanina manadena kirtaniya sadhari. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained in this way. If we want to always, everywhere be absorbed in hearing and chanting the glories of Krishna and his names, we must have this enthusiasm to to truly be a humble servant of the servant of the servant. Whoever we are. And I'll end with that famous example Prabhupada would quote so often from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, that simple illiterate Brahmin who was at Sri Rangam. His guru told him, recite the entire 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita every day in this courtyard. And it was the courtyard where all the great scholars and pundits would discuss the intricacies of scriptures. And he would just be sitting there trying to recite. But he didn't know how to say it properly. And gives me some hope, Trivita Prabhu. There's a place for all of us, examples. And people didn't take him serious. Sometimes he was ridiculed, sometimes he was ignored. But when Lord Chaitanya's came, he saw he was crying. The person said, Lord Chaitanya said, why are you reading if you don't understand? He said, sometimes I understand when I'm reading, sometimes I don't. I don't know if I'm saying it right or wrong. But my guru told me to do this. So he did it with enthusiasm. Every day, without fail, with such he didn't just, okay, now I have to do what my guru said. And he sat there, and even though he was doing it all, strange the way he was trying to, he did every day with enthusiasm because it was his guru's wish. Lord Chaitanya said, if you're not understanding it, then why are you crying like this? He said, because I'm seeing Krishna as the chariot driver of Arjuna. Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the controller of all controllers, and he's driving for his devotee. And he's explaining this message. And this is bringing such love to my heart. How merciful is Krishna. Because of his enthusiasm to please his guru, Krishna revealed himself more than all the people who could understand everything so intellectually. And Lord Chaitanya picked him up and embraced him and said, you are the true knower of Bhagavad Gita. Because you've understood the spirit and the essence. So this beautiful verse today, O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Is there any questions? Yes, Dravida Prabhu.
It's more like a request. And that is that this verse and the next verse go together very nicely. And if tonight you could speak on the next verse, which is the last verse. All right, if it doesn't work out, then we're out. Then.
Yeah, you have to tune the crowd.
Okay. But if we could just read the translation to the next verse, it completes the chapter, it completes this verse. Is that okay?
Well, if you read it, then everyone will.
I will read.
Thrilled.
Gravita and I are going to have a little discussion.
Yeah, we're gonna have a. I'm in trouble, but before I'm just gonna read the Sanskrit, and if you could just read the English translation, that would make my life sublime, or make it complete today. This is the last verse.
Purifying discussion.
Pibanti ye bhagavata atmanaksatam katam shavanaputeshu sambritam punanti ye vishayavadushatashayam bhajanti tachadanasodoru how to come. If you could just read the translation from that last book, that's my request.
I should read the translation for this next verse. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarine message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Everyone could repeat for the pleasure of Dravida Prabhu with enthusiasm. Very loudly. It's kirtan. Reciting Srimad Bhagavatam is kirtan. I'm not going to ask you to dance. Lord Chaitanya would be dancing at this moment. Very loudly, with great enthusiasm, repeat after me. Those who drink through oral reception.
Those who drink through oral reception.
You sound so sleepy. We'll try it again. Those who drink through oral reception.
Those who drink through oral reception.
Please raise your arms when you're doing it. Those who drink through oral reception.
Those who drink through oral reception.
Fully filled with the nectarine message of Lord Krishna.
Fully filled with the nectarine message of Lord Krishna.
The beloved of the devotees.
The beloved of the devotees.
Louder, please. Purify the polluted aim of life.
Purify the polluted aim of life.
Known as material enjoyment.
Known as material enjoyment.
That's incredible. What everybody's looking for is described here as the worst thing. Everyone in this world is looking. It doesn't say the polluted aim. It's not talking about material suffering. It's talking about material enjoyment. We're going to start all over again. But we'll say this part. Purify the polluted aim of life.
Purify the polluted aim of life.
Known as material enjoyment.
Known as material enjoyment.
And thus go back to Godhead.
And thus go back to Godhead.
To the lotus feet of Him.
To the lotus feet of Him.
The personality of Godhead.
The personality of Godhead.
One more time, enthusiastically. Those who drink.
Those who drink.
Through oral reception.
Through oral reception.
Fully filled.
Fully filled.
With the nectarine message.
The nectarine message.
Of Lord Krishna.
Of Lord Krishna.
The beloved of the devotees.
The beloved of the devotees.
Purify the polluted aim.
Purify the polluted aim.
Of life. Known as material enjoyment.
Known as material enjoyment.
And thus go back to Godhead.
Go back to Godhead.
To the lotus feet of Him.
The lotus feet of Him.
The personality of Godhead.
The personality of Godhead.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Are you pleased with us, Dravida? Is there any other questions? Or, Maharaj, would you like to give any wisdom to us?
Yes, I think people have to go to work. It's time for breakfast.
That is truly the nectar we've all been waiting for. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much.